of order and rise for a pledge of
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Susie, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Canfield.
Here.
Councilmember Chambers is absent. Councilmember Salzweedl.
Here.
Councilmember Yankovic.
Here.
And Mayor DeVore.
Here. Motion to excuse Marty tonight.
So moved.
I'll support. Any other discussion? Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? He's excused. Chief, is that item 2 a misprint?
It must be.
Okay. We'll skip that then. Motion to approve the consent agenda tonight minus item number 2.
So moved.
Support that.
Discussion or changes? Sue?
Councilmember Canfield.
Yes.
Mayor DeVore.
Yes.
Councilmember Salzweedl.
Yes.
Councilmember Yankovic.
Yes.
And Councilmember Chambers is absent.
All right. Citizen discussion for items not on the agenda. Good. Old business, number 5, letter A, Ware Road update, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Joe Berlin is here from VLDI to give us an update as to where we're at with the well monitoring out at the Ware Road site. We do have some information to share with you, so I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Thank you. Just want to start with a little bit of background about what we're dealing with here. This landfill operated from basically the mid-1950s to sometime in the early 1970s. In 1986, Department of Natural Resources, now known as Department of Environment, Lakes and Energy, did an investigation out there. They did 3 monitoring wells. It was part of the Clean Michigan Initiative, and this was done in select areas around the state, so it wasn't like there was a really known problem there. It was something that they were doing around the state. But they did find some impact, some perchloroethylene in a couple of monitoring wells. And at that point, they also found that groundwater flows to the northeast. And that's important to know because it's actually away from the homes to the west of the former landfill. So starting last spring, we started engaging with Eagle, the agency, and developing a work plan to address the issues that they'd identified. The first step was actually we had the entire area of the former landfill surveyed, so we knew where all the property lines were, and then orientated all that so we also knew where all the monitoring wells were. Because all we had at that point were some dots on a map, and it was really kind of tough to tell, especially with groundwater flow direction and elevations. At that point, we worked with the agency and with the city manager in developing a work plan to investigate the area. That investigation included proposed 9 additional monitoring wells from the original 3, and those were installed in October and November of last year. These wells are actually fairly deep for this area of Michigan. The shallowest ones that we installed were approximately 42 feet deep, and the deep ones like 92 feet deep. And it has a lot to do with simply the topographic changes across that area. Some of the areas are fairly low compared to the high areas. So then we did soil borings with the monitoring wells, sampled the soils as we went down per the work plan with the agency. We installed the monitoring wells, surveyed them in, developed the wells, and then we had a groundwater monitoring event towards the end of the year. We got those results in January. We put together a report, which I believe the council got in draft. That report actually went to Eagle today, so that they know what's going on, and we'll be engaging with them probably the next week or so, just to make sure that they understand everything that's going on. The concentrations that we've seen versus the highest concentration that we've seen in the monitoring wells out there is 18 micrograms per liter parts per billion. And the drinking water criteria is 5, so we're slightly above drinking water criteria. That's within really the area of the former landfill is the highest concentration. With groundwater flow going to the northeast, if you have your maps in the report, I think that's figure 2. You can see as you look further to to the northeast of the property. There's no homes in there, there's just a large area of forested land. And so when we look at natural attenuation processes, we really don't think it goes very far to the northeast at all. But that's one of the things that the agency probably want us to do at some point. Our next steps really are, since we have no exposures, and that's really important, is to the west is Deer Haven Park. It's away from that area, so we really don't have that potential concern. And so what we'll be doing here coming up this spring is to do another groundwater monitoring event to verify that concentrations are the same. And also groundwater flow throughout the year can vary a little bit, and so over time we develop that data to show exactly where it's going. Let's see. The remaining events will be this groundwater monitoring event, and the proposal for that was provided to the city manager yesterday. Since city offices were closed, we really haven't had a chance to just briefly look at it and talk briefly about it today. There's also some drums out there that we're coordinating disposal on. And then the agency will probably have, some feedback on what we sent to them, and then really that's we'll develop other than this monitoring event going forward.
Any questions for?
What future monitoring events do we see down the road? Is this going to be the last one in the spring if the results are similar?
Probably not. Generally, how these go is that, we'll have to develop a data set, because usually a lot of these things end up being either quarterly, semi-annual, or annual monitoring. So you may ramp it up to maybe a year or two of annual monitoring where you're doing it once a quarter, and then hopefully then, ratchet it down from that.
That's, the state makes that call.
Correct.
I went through the report, and not being a scientist, I saw a couple of things that were over the recommended limits, but it doesn't seem like it's too concerning.
I mean, anytime you have something above the limit, you want to pay attention to it. But again, the important thing when we look at this is anyone being exposed to any of this. And, if we had groundwater, if we had a bunch of, like a city drinking water well, right down gradient, we would have a concern. If we had a subdivision there, we would have a concern, but, we don't have that. And really, when we go off into, down gradient, again, with those low concentrations, just sort of mixing in the aquifer like you do in the river, is those concentrations will tend to start going down. And don't anticipate going very far to the northeast.
So they're not moving a lot, and the movement they have is away from people.
It's definitely away from people, and the thing is, we would call this plume stable and shrinking. So over time, those concentrations then, natural processes the plume will tend to basically shrink onto itself. But this particular chemical is actually fairly persistent. That's why we're seeing similar concentrations now to what we saw 30 years ago.
Is there any concern about developments in the future that we have to give them some documentation that this is here or there? Maybe it's not on the radar today, but 10, 15 years from now, somebody might decide I want to put a subdivision out there or additional homes to the west. Is there anything we...
Well, to the west,
To the
Yeah.
east.
Yeah, to the east, yeah,
Moving
yeah.
east.
East.
again, when you have these kinds of plumes over time, this is a plume, as we look at it right now, we call it stable and shrinking. So probably, hopefully, we're then shrinking back onto the property itself. But right now, we don't know how far to the northeast that it goes. Again, we're looking at slightly above the criteria. We're looking at parts per billion. And these are really low concentrations. So right now, we can't answer that question. That's really, we're right in the investigation phase. And we have a fair number of wells now, but we probably have to do a little bit more.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, anything else?
Yeah, I will have that proposal, like you said, I got the proposal that was revised this afternoon, and I needed a little more time before I brought it to you, so the next council meeting, you'll have that proposal to consider for the additional wells.
And we're gonna put the report on
Yeah, the report will go on the website tomorrow morning. We submitted it today, so it'll go on the website tomorrow morning, and the residents have been notified. They've been given basically a summary as to what's going on, and it's been mailed to them, so they should be hopefully receiving that today as well.
Fantastic. Item D, 990 North Washington, Mike.
Yes, the lease for 990 North Washington is due, it's set to expire on June 30th of this year, and I need direction from the city council as to what you would like to do going forward with that lease. One of the issues that came up is that the full property hasn't been assessed properly, and beginning in the 2021 tax year, they will assess it to make sure that the full property is being assessed. Since even though the city owns the property, since it's being used for private use, it's subject to being taxed. And at this time, the assessor has the true cash value of the entire property at $128,500, meaning the taxable value would be $64,250. And on a non-homestead tax rate of 47.5802 mils, the annual property tax would be $3,057.03. Currently, I believe we're only paying about $500-600 a year. In addition, our insurance carrier has brought up concerns in the past about this property to us that if something, in the event something were to occur, the insurance company would have to pay it, and that is a concern to them. So I really need direction as to what you want to do. If you want, I've given you a number of options that you can consider. Since we came to you a month ago, I've gotten 8 requests to purchase the property. Basically I've informed those people that no decision's been made at this point. But I've also informed that if you do sell the property, it has to be done through an RFP process, as our charter requires. Another option that I discussed with you is that if we were to verify, the building officials would verify that the cost to bring the home is more than the value, you could just give the property away. That is an option. However, you would have to make sure that the upgrades match the fair market value of the home in order to do that. And then also, I had the assessor also provide some updated information. If you wanted to split the properties, you could. The assessor did give me a letter that I gave to you last meeting, but basically, the minimum lot size you would, if you were to split the properties, he set a value for each one of them. And he did state that the property the home is on must, if you were to split it from the remaining properties, it must be an acre lot, as that would be the minimum lot size that they would allow in Virgins Township. So I know Mr. Diesel's here tonight to explain the history of it, because honestly I don't think anyone here really understands the full history as to what was being done. And but I do need direction at some point from the council as to where you want to go with this.
Gary, did you want to come up and say anything?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Gary Diesel, resident, 990 North Washington. To the point, I don't see you as landlords. I don't feel like a renter. We're just stewards. That's the main point. From there, the house was built by a man named, last name Hall in 1892. The city bought it in 1917. The 20s, the Kelly well was built and pushed the water up with the brick building with the pump in it, pushed the water up to Shepherd's Hill, the reservoir up there. The property to the north belonged to Muskegon Power. I think they had something to do with the dam, but then reverted to consumers, and that went bankrupt. The city paid $25,000 for that property where the scout cabin is. And Houseman gave a piece of property where the dam, the wood roof and dam is, for $1 to the city. It's It's a small piece, but valuable. The scout cabin was built in 1952. Atwood was annexed the factory in 1960. And then that was 85 with the house was built. 19 acres of Atwood along the river was allowed annexation by the State Boundary Commission after a lot of public dissent and consent by the then Township Supervisor James Cook, past owner and president of Atwood. The city requests to annex 2 river properties, Lyle Covert and Ron Potter's. It was denied. The people are becoming aware that with that annexation, so it goes to 95, and after being denied twice, the city finds 15 feet to jump over Washington Road as contiguous, and they were able to annex all the property except where the buildings are. That funny wing on the map, the property map. And then, so it's obvious then that something's going on. Light and Power, hoping to expand, asked to annex that's denied. Light and Power, there used to be an oak forest where the new pole barn parking lot is. And that was cut down to put up the pole barn. And used to be only poles and transformers were stored there. The water kept their things, the water department kept their things in the block building. And so 2004 is probably when the Light Power wants to expand was the problem. And those were my problems too. My rent was very low. Ray Quater got me in here. Oh, as a side note, I worked at the Ware Road in either fall of 79 or spring of 80. And I worked at the city garage too, with CETA program.
Gary,
I'd shorten this,
no, I was gonna ask, when did you move in?
1979, August.
Okay. And can I ask how that, I mean, was there a sign that said house for rent? And I'm not trying to be smart, Alec.
No,
None of us
no, this-
know.
This is
And
good.
At the first meeting, we were all, how'd they get in there in the first place?
Yes.
Not that we thought you did something wrong, we just had no idea.
I was driving down from M57 for the CETA work, and I already had a friend working with the city, and she said, oh, you know this, and my present wife, we were thinking of getting married and had a child, and a stepchild to me. And then she suggested that house. I talked to Ray Quater. We pulled the plywood off the front door,
So
the back door.
it was boarded up?
It was boarded up. And he wrote a simple lease then for $70 a month. 30 years at that, and it gave me money to build up. In those 30 years, I probably spent $20,000. Lifted the porch, used sheeting on the roof, front and back doors, tube and post electrical, changed all that out.
So the house was abandoned? Or
Yes,
empty, boarded up, and then you moved, okay.
yes. And then, so the beginnings of my problem were fighting with the community to stop Light and Power from developing that property. This room was full in 2007. I mean, full. There were 400 signatures out there on petitions. And there was an effort from a conservative group to make that happen. And it did happen, Kensal Park. So that brings us closer to time. I think 2010, 87, they closed the well, filled it, and Mr. Pasquale allowed me to slide the building over onto a temporary sled. That was possible. the pump house, held the bell. And then there, I don't have my timeline down as well. But in 2007, community comes up. It was excitement in town to not let that happen. And then light power leaves. And I'm losing my timeline here. But, it brings us up to the trouble at 2004 is the city said, well, we can't let you go at $70. We need a lease. So the lease is made up for 2 years and then a year, I'm a little bit foggy on that one. There's at least 2 years at $350 a month. And so with that, in 2007, things got really confused and it takes another year to get a new lease written. A real inhibited lease where I am responsible for everything. You know, whatever goes wrong there, I'm responsible. Real inhibitive. I had to hire a $1,000 lawyer, and there was Mr. Wen on the other team. And that didn't go well at all either, but went into it. And so that was 10 years ago. And in that time, the city has given a hot water heater, and they put up the fuse box, you know, breaker box. That's all the city has given. 8 gallons of paint when I moved in, to paint the outside. I probably painted 5 times. And inside, interior remodeling, all that. So, let's see. So light and power moves out, the buildings are tore down. I spent $1,000 trying to save the brick building, thinking it's historic. And that pretty much brings us to here. And so with 480 months, that added up to $80,000 to the city. Probably another 25 in materials and work on the house. So that's a chunk of my money.
2,500 or 25,000?
25,000, yeah. And then you figure too, utilities, which is a concern of the city, is another 35,000. Just for electric and water.
You're talking about all these numbers are the life of the lease, so since
Yeah.
August of 1979.
480 months, that's to the end of the lease. But I'm just dropping a couple months. So then I figured the city just paid it was $430 for up until 10 years ago, something like that, for taxes. And then with the hot water heater, so there's $20,000 the city has shelled out for me to be there. And like I understand the problems you're having with Ware Road. I work there in the garage here, and some of the things I know, I won't repeat. So, but I'd be careful, and I put my life into it. And I'm still pretty healthy. I don't know if I can afford all it needs right now, but it's my life. And we want to stay there. Any questions?
How is the home heated?
Wood.
Wood heat? Okay. I thought there was some discussion in the past that that needed to go away.
It has to keep the 68 degrees. That's to, we're up to 80 sometimes. But we've never gotten that cold there. The heat's a problem. I've insulated the upstairs, but it's still a hot house. When it hits 100 for a few days, it's warm.
Are you on a well and septic?
No, it's all city water. The city came right there.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a septic system with a drain field to the north. It's between the two driveways there,
Oh, so you have city water but not sewer?
no sewer. It's, I don't know how close it is. It's up to Gregerson's, I think. I'm not certain.
Yeah, actually, I don't think it comes past the cemetery.
Okay,
When Bob Fowler built his house, we ran water out to the street for him, and we ran sewer out there in case it ever came up the street. But where Bob lives, there.
That's about it.
at this point. So I think it stops at whatever Fremont Street is, it runs across the north end there. I think that's where city sewer stops.
so yeah, I can't describe to you the 4 years of stress that we went through before we got that 10-year lease, you know, it was 4 or 5 years being involved in the city. And being involved, I've worked with the water, the river groups, and my wife has worked with the Arts Council. We knew a lot of people living in this. I hardly know any. So it's different, but be careful. It's a mess. I understand your point. And, but my life is there, and I'd like to figure out something to work this out. Anything else?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I wasn't here a month ago, and you guys talked about this a little bit. One of the things was, you know, do we sell it for $1? I don't think the city can do that in the current financial shape that we're in. It's not huge money, but we still need to do everything we can for revenue. I dabble in real estate a little bit. I think that the assessor's valuation of that is extremely low. The fact that we have, 18 people or 8 people want to buy it. I'm confident, I actually drove up there tonight and looked at it. It's probably worth $60,000 at a minimum.
Just the 1 acre, or are you talking about?
Yeah, the house
just
in
the
an
1
acre.
Okay.
I haven't been in the house. I was somehow around a little bit 10 years ago when this was discussed for some reason, sitting in the audience or something. They have done a lot of work fixing the house up, and the value of it is somewhat based on the investment that they have made. I think that the rent, even currently, is probably 50% of what it should be. But I haven't seen the inside. You'd have to put a furnace in it. There'd be some repairs to get it to that. Gary mentioned that he was 70 years old at this point. I don't think anybody goes out at 70 and gets a mortgage for a house. I know we got to deal with this, but the fact that they've been there 40 years, I would feel good about letting them, giving them another 10-year lease that no one else but them can live there, and then deal with it at that point. To get a little bit of money out of it now, it's not enough to justify what we're doing to them, I think.
I also was sitting in those cheaper seats when it came up 10 years ago as that. And I just moved to town, and you're right, there was a lot of tension back and forth between the city. Like Greg said, we are in need of some finance for the city. The 10 years seems to be a little bit longer than what I personally would like to see, but I think those are the minimum that we can ask for. Is it 10 years? The maximum, I think, is 10 years on that part of it. Go ahead.
No, I'll wait.
Yeah, so I'm kind of on the fence of what we're going to do one way or the other. I did have a chat with another council member tonight who cannot be here, and he came up with an option of a possible 12 to 18 month renewal right now. Come back and visit that and see if there's a way that possibly they can come up with some financing to maybe buy the property. if that was an option that Gary and them were looking at. He was saying that there's some low loans out there that, for retirees that are very easily, it'd probably be no more than maybe $25 a month that he's paying now for rent, stuff like that part of it. So again, I don't know that much about it, but
You mean $25 more?
yes, a month, more than what they're paying now on some loans, but.
Could we sell a different piece of the property? Let them stay on whatever the minimum lot size is, rent that?
I think if you rent the if you're looking at renting a lease, I think the first thing you need to do is split that property. What you want to do with the remaining piece, that's up to the council. You can sell it, you can keep it, whatever you want to do. If you are going to look at a lease, even if you were to sell, I think you need to split the parcels. So you can do that. Remember that even if the option because I did discuss with Councilman Chambers as well, the concern. The only thing is the charter does somewhat limit you in that, because no matter what, you have to put the property up for bid if you sell it. Doesn't mean you can't give it to them for a market price, but you do have to follow that process, that it does have to be bid out. But I don't think you keep the 3 acres as it is now.
What is the value of splitting off if we're not going to sell those other pieces?
The 2 acres, that the house isn't on, the assessor has to have value at about $45,000.
Because it's not on the road? Does it kind of...
There'd be 2 buildable lots.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But with the development of the park and stuff up there, do we want to put more houses up there for $45,000?
No.
That's your call.
What about the far end being part of the park and the lot right next to Sandy and Gary selling that?
I would like to see that 3rd acre become park, because part of this uproar you guys are all talking about from way back when was a developer trying to get into that Boy Scout property.
Okay.
And everybody around here fought pretty hard to keep it park property, keep it undeveloped, and keep the Boy Scouts doing whatever they do up there.
And it gets used.
Yeah, a ton of time.
Yeah.
So I'd be all in favor of dedicating that acre that butts right up to it, because that protects that property. I don't know that I would be in favor of asking the residents for an income tax and then 3 months later selling property that we own for $1. I think that would be hypocritical.
We can't sell it for $1, can we?
No.
You can if you can determine if the value of the home, if the value to upgrade it to code was more than what it is, then you could. But there's a number of steps that would have to happen to determine that.
Did you not get some offers for those other potential parcels as well?
I've only really at this time, from my understanding, I've gotten for all 3,
Right.
but there've been people who specifically wanted to buy the house.
Susie, did you
Where the house property
had
is.
something to read in, right?
Yes, I do.
About this?
Yes. This was an email to Mike. It says, "Good morning, Mike. After reviewing the council packet for the January 18th meeting, I would like to update my offer to purchase 990 North Washington. With the property value estimates given by our assessor, I would like to increase my offer as follows. Option 1, 990 Washington house with 1 acre. I would like to offer the city $30,000 cash, no inspections, just a clean deed at the end of the lease per assessor's valuation and description."
Can I interrupt? Why are we even listening to this if we can't sell the property without putting it up for bid?
It needs to be, it was asked to be read in the record.
It's a public comment.
Okay.
And I did also explain to the individual that it would have to go up for bid.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
This one.
Option 2, 990 on Washington house with 2 acres. I would like to offer the city $40,000 cash, no inspections, just clean deed at the end of lease per assessor's valuation and description. I believe it would be in the best interest of the taxpayers of Lowell for this property to be put up for sale to the highest bidder, thus ensuring a fair and equal process to the rights of all interested parties. It also allows for the city to take an asset that has become a liability challenge and make it into a positive. This money could be used to help shore up the poor situation we are presently in regarding our employee pension fund. This is one opportunity of many others we need to find to ensure that we protect our valued employees' pensions. Respectfully, William Thompson, 720 Hillside Court.
Well, I think there's a lot here because $450 for a house on 3 acres is a steal deal all day long in any rental market. I know we're not in the business of wanting to put out 40-year tenants, right? With whatever it is now, 4 months notice, but I'd be in favor of something. A 10-year I think is just way too much. And then they stay at that 450 or whatever it is, and then what?
Well, I think we're probably due for an increase in rent. It's gone up every year as part of the 10-year lease.
Yes.
So I think that we look at the current ratio that it's been increasing. I think it was at $150.
All right, well, you and Cliff are both landlords. What's a house? How many bedrooms is it?
One, and then there's an upstairs that goes sleep.
Okay. Well, how much is a house on 3 acres going for if you're just renting?
Well,
in a
you don't
community
have,
like this?
I mean, that, somebody would pay $900 or $1,000 a month for that. But you'd be in there putting in
A
a heating
furnace.
system and ductwork for $10,000 or $8,000. There's some upgrades.
That's the other thing too, is that wood burning stove is on our insurance, so if something goes wrong,
Well, if something goes wrong, then the city gets a check, and you gotta be careful building fires, you don't wanna burn yourself out. But what are we paying for insurance on that, like $1,500 a year?
I'd have to look, I don't know.
I mean, the value isn't very high on it,
No.
it's mostly the liability, so.
The biggest concern the insurance carrier has is the liability.
Currently, we're paying $500 a year in taxes, so it has been an addition to our coffers to get some money out of it. In the future, when
It's
the,
going to Virgin's Township, it's not coming out.
Yeah.
well, but we're getting rent.
Yes.
Virgin's gets the taxes, it's just an
Correct.
expense. But we are getting the revenue of $500 a month, we're getting $6,000 a year, we're paying $500 in taxes. So it's $5,000 a year in our pocket. Looks like the rent's only going up $10 a month. I think it should probably go up $50 at a minimum to $500.
Do you want to tier that over time, or do you want,
Well, I would
keep it
say,
at 500?
no, I would say probably $20 a month or a year after that, just inflation and things. And it's still half of what market rate is for that property.
Mhm.
But it's not really a completely rentable property with heat. So it's a trade-off. But because we've done this for 40 years, at 70 years old, I think a longer-term lease, we deal with this once and we're done. And if something changes that they can no longer live there, then nobody else gets it. At that point, we make a decision and do what we need to do.
Well, I talked with former Mayor Hodges because he's the guy that signed the lease 10 years ago, and he said that they did their best to make the lease so that if, God forbid, Gary passes away, Sandy can't marry some 29-year-old pool boy, and then he can end up renting the, well, you know what I'm saying, someone else can't come in and then piggyback on the arrangement that we have with
Right.
Gary and Sandy. And I was around for the outpouring of community support. I never attended any meetings, but I remember the petition, and I remember there was a lot of, Gary and Sandy are pretty well known, and she's been reading meters as long as I've been aware of things in Lowell. So it's not like they're outsiders or they're somebody trying to get a deal. Wasn't Ray Quaida the city manager?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, let's dig him up and. I'm more in favor of separating the property, letting them stay there until such time as.
There's an expense to separating the property. You're gonna pay a surveyor $500 or $1,000. What benefit do we get? If we're not gonna sell those off?
Well, that's what I was thinking, is selling the middle one and doing the other one to the park? Or is that not?
I don't know, I have such a hard time staying a landlord for 20 more years.
Well,
Even $500 seems low to me. And that, saying we're only gonna deal with it once is great and all, but we've been sitting up here dealing with problems that other councils have said that exact same thing about, and they'll just kick it on down the road to somebody else. So it would be pretty hypocritical of us to go and do that to whoever's gonna be on this council in 20 years or whatever it is. So, I don't know, I'd be in favor of something shorter and say, hey, at the end, you know, finance it, buy it, live there, love it, but 20 more years just,
where are you getting 20?
or 10 more years, or however many more years.
Okay.
It's a long time to be in the landlord business, I think.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't jump into it, but I think this is just an unusual circumstance
Yeah,
here.
I agree.
And the value of the home is a result of their love and care for it for 40 years. I mean, it was boarded up with plywood over the door. If they had moved in, we'd be paying somebody $10,000 to haul away in dump trucks. At some point, that's a $60,000 or $75,000 property on 1 acre. Personally, I just feel we could allow that to go for another 10 years. Who knows what 80 brings, it may be more work than you can do at that point. I don't. One opinion.
Yeah. Is this helping you get no direction whatsoever?
Right. Right now, all I know is a lease with unknown terms and what to do with the other property.
It's another tough decision for us as a board. Sometimes you have to take the time frame out of it and everything that they put into it, and it turns out to be a business decision more than the personal. Sometimes you have to take that personal out of it, and nothing against the people that have done it for 40 years, but I have a home. In order for me to keep the value up, I need to paint, I need to keep the things up, I need to call Campfield for a new furnace every 10 years and things like that. So there are responsibilities that come with that part of it. And I think we've done a fairly good job of keeping the rent low for them for 40 years and that part of it. And if, you know, so I'm trying to take out the sentimental part of it and making sure that we're making the best decision for the citizens of Lowell too.
And I think that says a lot about it, is a lot of that money in repairs was able to be spent because the rent was kept so low. And it's just extra money, and that's what it should go back to, right? Because that low rent is scratching it back, it's gotta scratch it right back. So, I think Jim's right, I think you gotta take the heart out of it and just use the head, but I don't know what that is. I don't think kicking somebody out on June 30th is the right thing to do, but I also don't think continuing down this road for another decade is the right thing to do.
So we had 2 people in favor of a 10-year lease.
May I make one more comment here, please?
Sure.
I've collected a lot of junk in 40 years. I need that year anyway, 3 months, you know, so I don't want to leave, but if you come to a decision, I didn't bring any support, I didn't think you'd come to this quick. But, you hear me out, and I honestly say that there's trouble up there. You want to pay attention, it's registered. Maybe we have to meet with you.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if we would be able to, we have 4 of us here, and, I mean, what are you guys thinking in terms of a lease?
A year and a half, 18 months, 24 months maybe, with the rent increase, and then an option at the end. Say, there's 2 years to find financing, or, I don't know, but I have no intentions of ever voting to throw anybody out on June 30th of 2020.
I couldn't do that.
That's the only decision I've made so far, is that I would not vote for that. I think 18 months makes it 51 and a half years. And I think that's a long time.
So, if my understanding is that we would put an 18-month lease, and then we would put it out for, because we would have to put it out for bid if we're gonna sell, even if they're gonna buy. Even if you still have to, under the charter, you still have to put it out for bid.
Yeah, they won't be the high bidder, I can tell you that, but.
Doesn't
That
necessarily,
doesn't-
Yeah.
doesn't mean they have to be.
Right.
We don't always go with the low bidder either.
Correct.
Better quality product. It doesn't, that's a process. It doesn't.
Okay, I'm confused. So we put it out for bid, in a situation like, I understand that we have flexibility when we're asking for rebuilding a sewer pump. We can look at, this is the lowest, but gee, it doesn't give us the camera thing, so let's spend a little more and get the camera thing. But if we're selling a piece of property and Jim offers 40 grand and Greg offers 50, we can sell it to Jim because Jim's lived there.
You have the right to
Yes.
reserve and make any modifications to a bid that you would like.
Okay.
And do we feel comfortable what the assessor has assessed it for, or we're gonna, from Virgin's, or are we gonna?
Well, they're our assessor.
Right.
I am, but that's based, they're also just doing a basic
Right.
assessment. They're not doing a full appraisal of the property either. I would agree with Greg that you probably do a more full appraisal of the property, you're probably getting a higher value. I would agree. But I don't know.
Right now, you said we pay $541 and some change, right? In taxes?
Right, it's gonna be
And
over
that's gonna
3,000.
go up to 3 grand, over 3 grand.
Yes.
So
Starting,
That's if you kept the property as is. If you split the property and just make the 1 acre, your taxes you're gonna be 48 mils on the value of that whole lot, which is still gonna be more than what it is
But
today.
I'm saying,
but
as
it
it
won't be
sits
as high
right
as
now,
that.
is
Yeah.
over 3 grand,
Correct.
right? So that's
Yeah.
8 months rent, what is it, 7 months rent, right there, just to the taxes.
At
Correct.
$500 a month, at 12 months is 6,000.
Correct.
So half would go to taxes and half would come to the
If
city.
let's just say that the value of the property is, let's just say that the value of that property with the house is 30 grand, because that's what the assessor has on the 1 acre lot. So if you take 30 grand, for the taxable value on that is 15,000 times, well, how many